Last thing we talked about yesterday had to do with the aftermath of the Battle of the Rosebud. What was the big thing I talked about concerning the aftermath of the Battle of the Rosebud?
The commander did not make it.
No, we know all that, but what was the main thing, the last thing we made?
Sitting Bull.
Go ahead, say it, buddy.
Sitting Bull's warrior count doubled.
Sitting Bull's warrior count doubled from the Battle of the Little Bighorn because of that great victory at the Rosebud. So it was really a crucial victory for the Indians and a tough loss for us. It was about a tie, but it certainly benefited the Indians as well, because of that great victory that was at least felt by the Indians at the Battle of the Rosebud, Sitting Bull's warrior count doubled from the battle to the Little Bighorn 8 days later. And that'll be crucial. Okay, so what are they doing? They're up there. So Crook's not going to make it, but what are Gibbon and Custer and Terry going to do? They're going to meet on the far west. So that's what we're talking about today. Meeting on the far west. And some of these personalities, if you're interested in what they look like as we lecture, is why I gave you the handout. Now, this is kind of an interesting story. Early in the morning on June 21st, 1876, early in the morning on June 21st, 1876, before the commanders met on the far west, in the early morning of June 21st, 1876, prior to the meeting on the far west, General Terry gave George Custer command of the 7th Cavalry, okay, which was part of the Dakota Column. Was that what Grant wanted? No, Grant didn't want him to command any part of it. He let him go. But Terry knew that Custer could help him in this campaign, and so early in the morning on June 21st, 1876, before they met on the far west to discuss strategy, Terry gave Custer command of the 7th Cavalry. Okay? Now at the time, the 7th Cavalry was made up of 31 officers. 31 officers. 571 enlisted men, or soldiers. 31 officers, 571 enlisted men, and 45 scouts. Indian scouts, Arikara and Crow scouts. So the 7th Cavalry, when Custer was given command early in the morning of June 21st, 1876, was made up of 31 officers, 571 enlisted men, and 45 scouts. How many did the Dakota Column have with them all together, soldiers? You remember? Say it. 900. So he's got a big bunch. He's commanded of more than half of that column. Why didn't Terry do that? Because he wasn't a commander. He was a pencil pusher. Now, I'm going to give you key members of the 7th Cavalry. These are people that are in the 7th Cavalry under the command of George Custer. Some are going to be civilians, some are going to be scouts, some are going to be soldiers. Captain Tom Custer, which was George Custer's what? Brother. And we talked about that. So, George Custer's brother, Captain Tom Custer. Anybody remember who Lieutenant James Calhoun was from our previous lecture? His brother-in-law. Okay? So he's going to have with him his brother, Captain Tom Custer. He's going to have his brother-in-law, Lieutenant James Calhoun. He's going to have another lieutenant by the name of W.W. Cook. And these, again, if you're interested, you can see what they look like. But W.W. Cook. He's going to have Captain Miles Keogh. Captain Miles Keogh. He's going to have Captain G.W. Yates. Captain G.W. Yates. He's going to have someone with him that can't stand him because of the Battle of Washita. Who's that going to be?
Mark?
Already talked about him. Concerned about your retention a little today. Who? despised him because he failed to go after Major Joel Elliott and his men.
Oh, that guy.
Oh.
Captain Frederick Benteen is also with Custer, Captain Frederick Benteen. So we've got Captain Tom Custer, Lieutenant James Calhoun, Lieutenant W.W. Cook, Captain Miles Keogh, Captain G.W. Yates, Captain Frederick Benteen. Well, who's next? You said it.
Reno.
Major Marcus Reno. You'll see his gravesite when we go to the battlefield. Major Marcus Reno. A fellow by the name of Charles Barnum, who is the Chief of Scouts, which tells you what? Chief of Scouts. What's that? No, he isn't actually. But he's what, as far as all the scouts go? Indian or non?
The best.
He's not the best, but in charge. Okay, he's in charge. The Chief of Scouts was the man in charge of all the scouts that went with him, Charles Barnum. What civilian that was related to Custer was with him? We said. What? No, his wife got off the first night. We're talking about going into battle. Who was with him? Relative. Nephew Audie Reed. Nephew Audie Reed. Who else? What? Another brother? What was his name? Boston Custer. So he's got a civilian Boston Custer with him. He's got another civilian Audie Reed. He's got his favorite Indian scout, Bloody Knife. And he's got another civilian scout with him by the name of Mitch Boyer. So, here's who of significance was with Custer as far as names we'll talk about. Captain Tom Custer, Lieutenant James Calhoun, Lieutenant W.W. Cook, Captain Miles Keogh, Captain G.W. Yates, Captain Frederick Bennington, Captain Frederick Benteen, Major Marcus Reno, Chief of Indian Scouts Charles Barnum, a civilian by the name of Boston Custer, another civilian by the name of Audie Reed, Custer's favorite Indian scout, Bloody Knife, and Mitch Boyer, who is simply a scout that was a civilian on the expedition. Well, finally, later that morning of June 21st, 1876, Terry, Gibbon, and Custer hold a conference aboard the steamship Far West, which was under the command of Grant Marsh. He was the man that was commanding and sailing the Far West. It was his boat. And later in the morning of June 21st, 1876, General Terry, Gibbon, and Custer met aboard the steamship Far West, which was under the command of Grant Marsh. What's the first order of business? What do they need to do? What's their job here? Let's think about this. Let's not be asleep today. What's their job? What are they on this campaign for? To contain the Indians and put them on the reservation, either peacefully or by force, which could lead to extermination. So what do they need to know? Where are they? Very good, the location. So the first order of business during this meeting is to discuss how to find out where they are located. You can't put them on the reservation if you don't know where they're at. So the first order of business was to find out the location of the hostiles. Whose responsibility is it to try to find their location within the group known as the Dakota Column? Who's out looking for the location? Scouts. Very good. Crow Scouts. Crow and Arikara Scouts. So Crow Indian Scouts mainly were there helping the government locate the hostile Indians during this campaign. And the Scouts had been out and they told General Terry they thought that the hostiles were located in one of two places. Okay, it was their best guess that the hostiles were going to be located in one of two places. One of two places. I did myself. Okay, they were either going to be on the southern part of Rosebud Creek And where would the southern part be? If you look at this map, where would the southern part be? Here, by the mouth? North, south, east, west? In here, right? So they said they were either on the southern part of Rosebud Creek, or they estimated that they were on the Little Bighorn River. So we know the Bighorn, right? Bighorn's pretty close, is it not, to us? Well, it also flows in Montana, and a branch of the Bighorn River is the Little Bighorn River. So the Crow and Arikara scouts told Terry that they believed they could find the hostiles either on the southern part of Rosebud Creek or on the Little Bighorn River. That was their guess. So Terry knew the approximate location. What didn't he know about these hostiles once he finds them? How many? That he doesn't know that this will be, between the Sioux and the Cheyenne, the largest Indian fighting force in American history is waiting for them. He has no idea. So he knows the approximate location. What he does not know is he's about to face the largest Indian fighting force in American history.
So all 571 of the 7th Cavalry were at the battle?
171.
570.
We'll talk about that. They'll get split up. Yeah, they're there, all there though. Now, here's when the decision was made. Terry decided that he and John Gibbon would lead Gibbon's infantry. So General Terry and John Gibbon will lead Gibbon's infantry, along with the 2nd Cavalry of the Dakota Column. So the decision was made that Colonel Gibbon and General Terry would lead Gibbon's Montana Column, plus the 2nd Cavalry from the Dakota Column. Is that making sense? So they're going to lead Gibbon's infantry along with the 2nd Cavalry of the Dakota Column. Now, Gibbon and Terry are going to proceed up the Yellowstone River and they're going to go south up the Bighorn. So they're going to proceed up the Yellowstone from Rosebud Creek and head down the Bighorn. Does that make sense? You can kind of see by the red there. Custer then is going to take the 7th Cavalry. And he's going to move down south on what? Rosebud Creek, looking for what? Hostiles. If he doesn't catch them, then he's to turn and head towards where? Little Bighorn. And can you see what's going to happen? The two forces are going to meet together. That's the plan. So Terry and Gibbon and the Montana Column and the 2nd Cavalry is going to go this way up the Yellowstone and then work their way down the Bighorn toward the Little Bighorn. Custer is to take the 7th Cavalry and go south down Rosebud Creek, because that's one of the places where they thought they might be. If they do not find them, they're to make a decision and move towards the Little Bighorn. And the two forces are going to meet. And the idea is you're hoping that the Indians are where? Right in here, yeah, in between them, and they're going to contain them and force them to the reservation. That's the plan. Okay, does that make sense to you? Okay, well, let's talk about Custer's 7th Cavalry and the preparations he's making for his march. Okay, talk about Custer's 7th Cavalry and the preparations he's making for his march. I'll just give you some statistics about Custer's 7th Cavalry. This is kind of interesting. The government was concerned about the strain on U.S. Army horses. So they made a rule that the maximum weight limit for a soldier in the cavalry was going to be 160 pounds. If you weighed more than 160 pounds, you could not be a cavalryman. Isn't that crazy? Because that's not much weight. But in those days, people were smaller. So the maximum weight to be a cavalryman in the 7th Cavalry was 160 pounds. You could not weigh more than that because they were concerned about strain on the horses. They also had a maximum height, and it was 6 foot. You could not be taller than 6 foot. You know what the average height for a member of the 7th Cavalry was in 1876? The average height of those soldiers?
5'6".
Close, 5'7". Custer was 5'11". But 5'7" was the average height of all the members of the 7th Cavalry. That was the average height. Custer was 5'11", which was considered actually kind of tall at that time. Now we wouldn't think that at all. Now, they're getting ready to march, and each member of the 7th Cavalry was equipped with enough ammunition, supplies, and rations for 15 days. 15 days. So if this campaign to put these Indians on the reservation lasts more than 15 days, they're going to be out of ammunition. They're going to be out of supplies and out of rations, or what they eat. So during the upcoming march, each member of the 7th Cavalry was equipped with enough ammunition and supplies and rations for 15 days. And here's what each soldier was equipped with. These are not officers, these are soldiers. Each soldier had the following. And I've got these. I should have brought them. They're replicas, but they are the same. Number one, they each had a model 1873 Colt single-shot 45 caliber pistol. Okay, each trooper had a model 1873, which means it was made when? 1873, so fairly new. A Colt single-shot 45 caliber pistol. Number two, each trooper had a model 1873 Springfield carbine. Springfield carbine. And they were trapdoor carbines. And I'll bring mine and show you. Would you like to see it? It's pretty cool. Okay, it's a trapdoor. In other words, one shell at a time, it opens up, you stick the shell in and bring it down, shoot it, open it up, shell pops out, put another in. I'll bring them and show them to you maybe tomorrow, yep? Have a good trip. And finally, they were given 25 rounds of pistol ammunition and 100 rounds of carbine ammunition. What's a carbine, by the way? It's a rifle, okay? So they got a model 1873 Colt single-shot 45 caliber pistol, a model 1873 Springfield carbine, 25 rounds of pistol ammunition, and 100 rounds of carbine.
How these single-shot pistols work?
They just you can put 6 shells in, but you got to pull the trigger every time.
Oh,
yeah.
I got you.
Yeah, you got to not only pull the trigger, but what else do you have to do? You got to cock it. Yeah, you got to cock it and shoot it. That's a single shot. It's not even this here. It's cock it, shoot it, cock it, shoot it, cock it, shoot it. Okay, and I'll show you and I'll bring it tomorrow. Now, contrary to popular belief, this is a rumor, there were no sabers carried on this expedition. So anytime you see Custer standing there with this saber at Last Stand Hill, is that true? No, no sabers were carried. They were considered heavy, noisy, and useless. Okay, so they were all stored. Now, could there have been sabers there, though? Yes, because officers were allowed to carry their own personal weapons if they wanted. And most chose not to take a saber because they were too heavy, noisy, and useless. Now this is kind of interesting. Not everybody was dressed the same in the 7th Cavalry. Military uniforms were not required for this campaign. So soldiers had a variety of clothing. Some had straw hats, white shirts. So everybody was dressed a little bit, I'm not saying there wasn't people dressed the same, but it wasn't uniform military, everybody the same. Okay? So they were a little bit ragtag. So, where are they right now? Where are all these people at still? We told you what they're going to do, but where are they at? They're at the far west. So, here are General Terry's orders to Lieutenant Colonel Custer. These are crucial that you know. This is the orders that Terry gave Custer. New subtopic, yeah? Okay, General Terry's orders to Lieutenant Colonel Custer. These are his orders. So picture this in your mind. They're sitting on the far west. They've made these decisions I've talked to you about. And at that point, General Terry gives Lieutenant Colonel Custer the following 4 orders. 4 orders. Now you think about these. 4 orders. You get a chance to, this is, I just hardly wait till you get there. This is Anybody know what those are? Just drew in there? Thank you. Number 1, Custer was to travel down Rosebud Creek, like we talked about, toward the Wolf Mountains and try to locate the hostile Indians. He was to travel down Rosebud Creek, south, toward the Wolf Mountains to try to locate these hostile Indians. That was his first order. Travel south down Rosebud Creek toward the Wolf Mountains, searching for the hostiles. Number 2, Custer was ordered